Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Miles, the not Mars Volta playing Not Goliath. I suggest giving Goliath a re-listen before or after listening to this track to compare the two. In some ways, this is the better song, in Miles' opinion. I'm interested in this because I did just go back and listen to Goliath right now to check that out. And I remember I kind of enjoyed that the first time I heard it. I enjoyed parts of it this time I heard it too. Definitely reminds me more of At the Drive-In and more of traditional post-hardcore than some of the later stuff we would hear from that group. There's still parts of it that weren't my deal, but I do remember people telling me that Bedlam and Goliath is the album I should start my Mars Volta journey on, and I think 2 or 3 of those tracks have definitely worked for me better than some of the other stuff we've heard from them. We're going to be looking at Rapid Fire Tollbooth here, though, from Omar Rodríguez-López. This comes off of the Se Dice Bisonte No Buffalo album. Let's dive into this, see what's going on with this, and how it compares to Goliath, I suppose. Let's kick it. So it's quite a bit slower, but the funky rhythmic element, the psychedelic component in the harmony, and that general rhythmic cadence. Man, really took their time to get back to this verse. This guy's just having fun over here with these short ideas. Nice bass lick. So it still had this really disjointed dual vocal idea. You've got these vocals, and this guitar. They're all just slightly out of metric sync with each other. Very interesting. So it's the verse and the chorus from Goliath, or I guess Goliath is the verse and the chorus of this. But that's kind of all this is. It's interesting to listen to them back to back, and I think hearing Goliath first is also a blessing and a curse. Okay, let me start with a couple of ideas, and then we'll work with comparisons. What this track is doing is kind of mixing blues and psychedelic together with a little bit of funkiness. Generally speaking, I feel like the harmony dances between the realms of all three of these. There are parts of it that feel a bit more melancholic, definitely looking at what blues rock would do. We hear a lot of like expression in the guitar playing. There's lots of bends going on. It's all about pulling out this emotive part of the guitar. But there's also psychedelic components to this too, and it's really interesting that they seem to be interwoven. It's not like I can point to this specific riff and say this was a bluesy one, and point to this specific riff and say that's more of a psychedelic one. I think a lot of it comes down to the texture of the guitar tone itself, the effects put on it. The compression is a bit more than you would normally hear with blues guitar, but maybe there's some other elements to it as well that evoke it. Maybe it's the reverb on it as well, but I also think that harmonically we're looking at some psychedelic components too. There are specific series of notes within riffs that feel to me more 60s coded with that psychedelic rock sound. It's more expansive in tone and pulls out, I don't know, how would you describe, I mean, psychedelic, but that's a cheap way to describe it because you're just defining it by being itself. And I think while most of this community would understand, if I, just on a gut instinct, what does psych rock sound like? I think most of us would understand, but what if you don't? But I don't know that I know how to put that into words either. It feels transportive. It feels, I don't know, as far as like Western pop culture goes, it's the sound of a drug trip. But again, I don't feel like that's using musical ideas to describe it either. I think I'm just gonna have to move on from here and hope that you're on the same wavelength as me, because I'm lacking for words in this. How do you describe psych? I got to do that on my own time, man. But it does pull psychedelic elements in. But what's interesting too is rhythmically, there's a lot of funk to it, especially when you listen to the guitar over here and their syncopations, their odd phrasings. They're not really a lot of melodic ideas or harmonic ideas. It's a lot of texture and rhythm, but short bursts of rhythm. This is very clearly inspired by guitar work of funk music and sort of just funk rhythms in general, but as far as I can tell, pushed to an extreme that almost feels like progressive funk in a lot of ways. But there's also some harmonic ideas coming from our lead lines over here too that seems to bring in a little bit of the almost upbeat positive elements to it. Once again, it's not specific riffs, it's specific passages within riffs. It's really interesting to listen to the melody duck and weave through all of these different genres, bringing together the melancholic downer of blues with the ecstatic upper of funk, but also bringing in this exploration found in Psych and finding a way to make all of them work together. And honestly, I don't know how it works. I know I hear it in it. That's about as far as my understanding of it goes. I don't know if I made this conclusion in the Goliath reaction. It's really interesting how clear it is here, because even just listening to Goliath now, I don't know that I picked up on all of this. Granted, it was a bit more of a casual listen. I wanted to kind of get an understanding of some of the main ideas so that I would have some basis to compare this track to. Completely unbeknownst to me, it was going to be identical. This is the riff that shows up in Goliath, and the general rhythmic elements in the drums and all that stuff. So pretty cool to hear what I'm picking up on here that I haven't prior. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that this is slower. I'm not quite sure if it's to a benefit of this track or not. I don't know which one I prefer. Actually, I do. I prefer the energy of Goliath. It has directionality to it that this track doesn't. It's a twofold thing though. But I do think that this one is more digestible. The extra speed, which honestly I don't think is much, maybe 20 BPMs tops, but I'm not confident it's that much. I think it is much smaller of an increase in speed. It makes this one more legible, it makes it more followable, but it also makes it more repetitive. This track spends more time in the verses, and then you end up hearing that verse riff a lot. And it's dragged out just ever so slightly more, that at least in comparison, at the beginning of this track, I found myself wondering why it wasn't kicked up a bit more. It feels too slow. Now that might be a bias of having just listened to Goliath and being more familiar with that, especially since it is longer. That's a 7.5 minute track almost. This one being just over 5. But it does feel like it gets through the ideas a little quicker. But I do enjoy the readability of this. I think that the slower pace also allowed me to spend more time with the chords, allowed me to really feel the harmonic information, but it also leaned a little bit more into the psych and blues sounds. The upbeat energy made Goliath feel more punky. It kind of gives it that post-hardcore vibe that the vocals lead into, and the music does as well, a bit on the tempo side of things. Here, not so much. There is not a lot of punky ideas going on in here, and I'd say that this lines up more with rock than anything else. But it also brings the song down a bit, and it feels heavier, it feels weightier, it feels more cumbersome than Goliath does. Goliath is light on its feet. It is a faster experience. I kind of like the weight of Rapid Fire Tollbooth, especially when you bring in the psychedelic and bluesy elements, which are more exploratory and grounded. I feel like the slower pace really works at working together with that to push this idea of something that feels grounded in emotion rather than in experience, which I think Goliath is more experiential. So I find that to be a really interesting one that, once again, I don't think it's clear cut to me which one's better. I know which one I enjoy more, but I think artistically speaking, Rapid Fire Tollbooth has the win for tempo. Now, one thing that is in both of these that doesn't really work for me, but actually makes a lot more sense in this situation is the vocal delay. There are quite a few places where the vocals get split up, particularly in the chorus. We'll have the lead vocal, and then they'll come in just a little bit after, or maybe in a call and response version to the right side. This one being quite a bit thinner, quieter, and feeling distant. Now, this is psychedelic because it's sort of the audio version of what film and television likes to do when they introduce psychedelic drugs, where the person moves their hand and then there's the after image that comes in behind it. The blurry, faded echo of movement. This is kind of that. And we see a heightened example of this at the end of the song as we move out of the solo section into the final chorus that I pointed out, where we have the center vocal, the right vocal, and the left guitar all just a hair bit out of sync with each other. It becomes a cacophony of sounds working on all sorts of different subdivisions of the time signature. It's a lot to take in at that moment, but even in the earlier choruses, we can see this effect. This is only amplified, at least to me personally, by having the vocals be as high-pitched as they are, using the falsetto with a lot of power and physicality behind it to get these almost shrill sounds that then get echoed and delayed and doubled, only exacerbating the intensity of these high-pitched sounds. It feels like a drug trip. Does a really great job of that. And I think once again, it sounds better here because of the heightened, because of the heightened weight of the slower tempo, but also because of the heavier focus on the psychedelic parts of the riffs. But I also find that it's a bit less palatable here because of those moments where it feels it's the shrillness of the vocals. I think that's where I want to go with this. It feels difficult to listen to, and you're making me sit within it longer, and the dissonance is even stronger through the delay. It grates on me just a little bit more than the Goliath version does. I think the biggest sweeping change on this one is actually what I think is maybe the worst part about it. It's the solo section. I'm not going to say that Goliath's solo section was great, but it was incredibly diverse. This one gives us the verse riff underneath some sax solo in the first time around and some guitar solo the second time around, and it ends up just sort of droning on. Not much variation to it. I think this is where some of the Afro-Cuban rhythms really come into play in helping alleviate some of the repetitiveness in Goliath through these sections, but also having a journey through the bridge, going through a bunch of different ideas, whereas here we just have the guitar solo on top of the guitar riff from the verse, and it kind of doesn't go anywhere, which is it's par for the course with Mars Volta. When they get into these exploratory, psychedelic, avant-garde solo sections, they sort of just are. You got to be there for the vibe of it. And so, solo meandering is just something I expect from Omar and from pretty much anyone associated with the Mars Volta at this point. But what we get here is the meandering without all of the experimental ideas that sit around it, and it just kind of doesn't do anything. It takes a while to get through, and the guitar's not leading us anywhere. There's no wild sounds. There's no other genres worked into it. I think it's fine. The guitar soloing is technically fine. It's a good bit of technical display put on. It goes places melodically. It just doesn't end up telling a story. It works with these 4-bar chunks that make sense together, but don't really go in a linear fashion. It's just cycling, going through this main idea over and over and over. And it's one of those moments you kind of look at your watch. You're like, dude, you've been doing this a while. Where are you going with this? And like I said, if you're there for the vibe of it, solid. If you want to be taken somewhere, this is not a transportive moment, not like Goliath does. So again, I don't think that there's a clear winner on this. I think both songs do something very different. This one being a bit more standardized within the blues and psych rock sounds, whereas Goliath is way more experimental and progressive and has 2 extra minutes on it, and it really expands that bridge and solo section out. But I think both of them could work for different people. And unfortunately, I'm in the middle. I like parts of this much better than Goliath. I like parts of Goliath much better than this one. I do like the focus of this one, though. It gets in, does your verse, chorus, hits some solo, gives you another chorus, and we're done. Goliath, it does some weird stuff in there that doesn't feel cohesive with everything else, but it does feel punkier, which I enjoy, and the pace feels more up to par with what I like to listen to. So, I don't know, like on subjective levels, I enjoy both of them for different reasons. On objective, more artistic or thematic reasons, I enjoy both for different reasons. So, I don't know, I'm kind of curious where other people sit on this. Which one do you enjoy more, and is it an artistic reason, or do you just enjoy the way it sounds better? Let me hit some lyrics on this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Omar has a way with words. At least, I always forget who does the lyrics for Mars Volta. I think it is Omar, actually. Oh, actually, it's probably Cedric. Omar's the guitarist. Anyways, the lyrics here are bonkers. It's the same problem I have with Mars Volta, where it's so steeped in metaphor and figurative language, and you really have to have like that one key to unlock what all of it means, unless you're just like a really great poetic analyzer, which I'm not. So there does seem to be some strife, though. We have our narrator and someone who did them wrong, and now they keep them as a pet. It says that he's got him leashed up, but maybe that's more of a metaphorical leash. Maybe it's just having some sort of power he weighs over him to keep him tamed in a sense. Maybe it's blackmail. I don't know. There's a lot of violence in this track, though. It says, "You might not remember how we sleep in the past. I'll soon remind you when I cut off the hand that was promised to me, and then we'll shake on it," which is a wild phrase, to cut someone's hand off and then have a handshake with that person. It says, "Did you scratch your left eye? Did it blink 3 times or once just to reel you in?" And I have no idea what that means. It says, "When I peeked inside your room through that rusty bitten lock, you sank a nail inside me that was 20 years too long. The black stockade you kept, smell of wet cigarette, and the sweat that just would not cease. I have been for far too long just to keep you here on this leash." I don't know. We have an antagonist and a protagonist. They've been at each other's throats for a long time, it seems, and right now our narrator has the upper hand. It says, "For the rest of your debt, because I knew you'd forget, I throw ashes at the bones of your feet. Now that you slay with a pack of strays, I do believe you're not the mongrel for me." And this implies something else. Control, sure, but a relationship of sorts. Maybe not necessarily positive for both, but calls them a mongrel, but says maybe you're not the one for me. I have no idea, though. I was so lost on this. The chorus is even more confusing. It says, "Give me that flesh, please, the one that talks like me. I really want it now. Baby, put it on slowly. I want you to show me. Does it make you feel all right?" I'm so lost. What does that mean? These dudes, man, they write some crazy stuff. And, usually when I come off of a Mars Volta track and I'm like, these lyrics are bonkers, y'all hit me up in the comments. You're like, actually, this refers to this, and then that unlocks the understanding for this stanza. And once you know that, you can look at this and it's a new perspective on that. I'm like, okay, when you break it down like that, yeah, I can see how this makes sense, but like I'd never come to these conclusions myself. So I'm really hoping that the Mars Volta fans come out in force on this one and help me with this set of lyrics. Rapid Fire Tollbooth, what does that have to do with any of this? I'm curious. I'd love to have a little bit of help on this. I don't know that what I get out of this matches up with the music any more than what Goliath had for me. I feel like both of them are tracks where the music was written one time and the lyrics at another, and then they're just kind of smashed together. Rhythmically, the lyrical delivery matches the music, absolutely. But the emotions of the words, the themes in the lyrics, for both of these tracks, I don't really see too much synergy with the musical themes going on. These are my thoughts, though. Omar Rodríguez-López. Although I guess this might be, Miles also said this was not the Mars Volta. So I'm kind of curious who is in on this. According to Genius, it says the writers are both Cedric and Omar. But I don't know about the rest of the... I see there's a bassist, a keyboardist, a drummer. But I don't know if they were part of the Mars Volta. Like, I don't know what this group's made up of. Should I call this the Mars Volta? It definitely has Cedric and Omar in it. Anyways, the artist on Deezer says Omar, so this is Rapid Fire Tollbooth by Omar. That was a weird tangent. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you want to add on to what I said or correct me on? If I was wrong about it, let me know. Put that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.